Professor Aldridge, she said with a calm voice, I want you to know something. We don't need new physics to change the world. He frowned. What do you mean? What if the greatest breakthrough wasn't in new discoveries, but in daring to see old problems through a brand new lens? Prepare for a story that will challenge everything you believe about science and possibility. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by and supporting us. Today, I'm excited to share a powerful story about courage, curiosity, and how a young mind challenged everything we thought was impossible. Let's jump right in. Professor Aldridge stood confidently at the front of the large lecture hall, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the rows of desks. The room was filled with eager students, their notebooks open, pens ready, eyes fixed on the man they considered one of the greatest minds in physics. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, lighting up the polished wooden floors and the blackboard covered with complex equations. The atmosphere buzzed with quiet anticipation, a 100% sustainable energy source. Professor Aldridge's deep voice echoed through the room. Impossible. Physics has been clear on this for decades. He looked out over the students, his eyes steady, filled with certainty earned through years of study and discovery. No matter how much we try, the laws of thermodynamics, the limits of energy conversion, these things cannot be broken. We must accept our limitations. The students nodded, their faces serious. Some scribbled notes quickly, others exchanged small glances that said, he's right. The professor's words carried weight. He had published countless papers and won awards. No one here wanted to challenge a titan of science. In the back corner, however, a small figure sat quietly, barely noticed by most. Lily was not a student, not even a teenager yet. At 12 years old, she was a local girl known mostly for her wild curiosity and endless questions. Her legs barely reached the floor, and she balanced a small notebook and pencil in her lap. Unlike the others, Lily wasn't here for credit or grades. She came for the thrill of learning, for the joy of discovery. Her bright eyes sparkled with excitement and a touch of nerves. She had spent nights and weekends working on her own ideas about energy, ideas that didn't involve breaking the laws of physics, but rather using what already existed in smarter ways. The problem wasn't that energy couldn't be fully sustainable. The problem was how people thought about it. As the professor finished his statement, Lily's heart pounded louder in her chest. She glanced around, feeling the weight of hundreds of curious eyes in the room. Could she really speak up? Could she challenge someone so respected? But the words inside her wouldn't stay quiet. Slowly, she raised her hand. The room seemed to pause. A few students shifted in their seats, surprised to see a small girl among them daring to speak. Professor Aldridge looked at her with a raised eyebrow, a faint smile playing on his lips as if amused by the interruption. Well, young lady, he said, his voice calm but with a hint of challenge. Go ahead. Surprise me. Lily took a deep breath, steadying herself. She pulled a small, neatly wrapped package from her backpack, a device no bigger than a thick book, and set it carefully on the desk in front of her. Then she unfolded a stack of papers filled with diagrams, notes, and calculations she had pored over for months. I built a small prototype, she began, her voice clear but humble. It doesn't rely on new physics or breaking any laws. Instead, it's about using the energy we already have in much smarter ways. The room leaned in, curiosity replacing skepticism. Lily explained that her device was a microgrid system that connected solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries in a way that predicted exactly how much energy was needed and sent it precisely where it was needed without waste. It was powered by artificial intelligence that learned from patterns, weather, usage, even the time of day. Professor Aldridge's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. But this isn't new physics, he said slowly. It's just better organization, better planning. Exactly, Lily said, a small smile breaking through her nerves. Sometimes the problem isn't physics, but how we use what we already have. The impossible isn't always new science. Sometimes it's new thinking. The room held its breath. the tension hanging in the air like a question waiting for an answer. Professor Aldridge looked at Lily again, a spark of something unfamiliar flickering in his eyes. "Well then," he said quietly, "let's see where your thinking takes us." The students exchanged glances, excitement bubbling up in the silence. What had started as a lecture about limits was about to turn into something no one expected. The professor's amused smile stayed as he invited her to speak more, setting the stage for a challenge far bigger than anyone could guess. Lily carefully reached into her backpack and pulled out a small device no bigger than a thick book. It looked strange, with tiny wires wrapped neatly around its sides and a few blinking lights glowing softly from within. She set it gently on the desk in front of Professor Aldridge and a classroom full of students. Alongside the device, she placed a thick stack of papers, all covered with drawings, charts, and detailed notes. Her voice was clear and steady, despite the hundreds of eyes watching her. "This," she said softly, "is not a new source of energy. It's a way to use the energy we already have, but much smarter." The students leaned forward, curiosity replacing the earlier skepticism. Professor Aldridge tilted his head slightly, interested but cautious. Lily continued, "My invention connects solar panels, wind turbines, and small batteries in a tiny, smart grid. It's powered by artificial intelligence that can predict when energy is needed and send it exactly where and when it's needed. This means almost no energy is wasted." She flipped through her notes, pointing to a diagram showing how the pieces fit together. For example, if the sun is shining and the wind is strong, the system stores the extra energy in batteries. Then, when the weather changes or when people use more electricity, the AI knows exactly how much to release. It learns patterns, like when people turn on their lights in the evening, or when machines run during the day. One student raised a hand, eyes wide. "So it's like a super smart energy manager." "Exactly," Lily smiled. "It's not magic or new physics. It's better use of what we already have." Professor Aldridge's confident expression began to falter. He leaned in closer to examine the device and the diagrams. "But this," he paused, searching for words. "This is just better organization. It's not physics. It doesn't break any laws or introduce anything new to science." Lily nodded. "That's right." She looked him in the eye, a small smile playing on her lips. "Sometimes the answer isn't new science. Sometimes it's new thinking." A soft murmur spread through the room as students whispered to each other. Some exchanged looks of surprise, others nodded thoughtfully. The idea that progress could come from smarter ideas instead of completely new discoveries was starting to sink in. Professor Aldridge folded his arms and looked at Lily carefully. "You've built something clever," he admitted slowly. "But the real challenge is whether this can work on a large scale. Ideas sound good in theory, but the world is complicated." Lily's eyes shone with quiet confidence. "I know. That's why I've been testing it with small communities and homes nearby. The results show less wasted energy, lower costs, and fewer carbon emissions." Another student asked, "How does the AI learn? Isn't that technology expensive?" "Good question," Lily said. "The AI uses simple algorithms that get better over time by watching patterns. It's designed to work on affordable hardware, so it can be used anywhere, even places without big budgets." Professor Aldridge nodded thoughtfully, clearly impressed. "And you did all this on your own?" Lily shrugged modestly. "I asked for help from local engineers and friends, but mostly, I taught myself. I love solving problems, even if I don't know everything." The professor's usual confident tone softened. "You have something valuable here. It reminds me that science isn't just about finding new laws. It's about using what we know in new ways." Lily smiled wider, feeling a rush of hope. "Exactly. Sometimes, the impossible isn't about new physics. It's about our imagination." The room was quiet again, but now it was full of energy, not the kind in power plants, but the kind of energy that sparks change. Professor Aldridge's eyes met Lily's, and for the first time that day, he looked less like a teacher and more like a student ready to learn. Her word hung in the air, simple but powerful. Sometimes the answer isn't new science. It's new thinking. Word of Lily's invention spread like wildfire through the university halls and beyond. At first, it was just a few whispers among students, passing the news with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. A 12-year-old girl had challenged Professor Aldrich, the very man they all looked up to as a giant in physics. Some found the idea impossible, others impossible to ignore. In the corridors, groups gathered in hushed conversations. Can a kid really outsmart years of research? One student whispered. Maybe she's onto something. Another replied, eyes bright with excitement. The debate grew louder each day. Soon, reporters arrived, their cameras and microphones capturing the buzz. Headlines flashed across local news channels. Local girl challenges Harvard science giant. And is the future of energy in the hands of a child? The attention was overwhelming, and the university quickly found itself at the center of a media storm. Professor Aldrich felt the pressure mounting. His office, once a quiet refuge filled with books and papers, became a place where he wrestled with his own doubts. The idea that a child's invention could question decades of his work gnawed at him. Yet, outwardly, he maintained his usual pride and confidence. "This can't change physics," he muttered during a faculty meeting, shaking his head. "It's just a clever trick, a toy that won't work on the real scale." His colleagues nodded, some relieved to hear his dismissive words. But inside, Aldrich was unsettled. He found himself reviewing Lily's notes late into the night, searching for flaws, trying to prove her wrong. Yet the more he looked, the harder it became to dismiss her. The idea wasn't breaking physics, it was using it in a smarter way. He hated to admit it, but maybe she was right. Meanwhile, Lily faced her own battle. Skepticism wasn't limited to the professor. Teachers questioned her methods, some scientists doubted her knowledge, and reporters pressed her for answers as if expecting her to fail. One day, after a long day of interviews, Lily walked through the buzzing campus toward Aldrich's office. Her heart was steady but determined. She knew what she believed and was ready to face the challenge head-on. She knocked softly on the professor's door. When he opened, he looked tired but surprised to see her. "Professor Aldrich," she said with a calm voice, "I want you to know something. We don't need new physics to change the world." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "We need to think differently," Lily explained, stepping inside. "We have so much energy already. The problem isn't physics, it's how we use it. My invention shows that smart thinking can do more than just science experiments. It can save energy, money, and the planet." The professor studied her for a long moment. "You have courage," he finally said. "And your idea, it challenges me more than I expected." Lily smiled softly. "That's all I wanted, to be heard." Their conversation marked a quiet turning point. Though doubts still swirled around them, something had shifted. The impossible question was no longer just about physics. It was about openness to new ideas and the courage to change. The world outside kept watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The day of the conference arrived, and the large hall buzzed with anticipation. Scientists, engineers, university officials, and reporters filled the seats, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and hope. Cameras were set up to capture every moment, and the bright lights illuminated the stage where Lily stood, ready to prove herself. The air was heavy with expectation as Lily began her presentation. Her voice was calm, confident, and clear as she explained the workings of her smart grid device. She described how the system connected solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries, all managed by AI algorithms that predicted energy needs with remarkable accuracy. Then, the moment everyone waited for came. Live data flashed on the large screen behind her. Charts showed energy usage dropping steadily, while costs fell sharply. Pollution levels decreased as the system prevented waste and unnecessary power generation. Gasps echoed through the room. The numbers told a story no one had expected. This tiny device was making a big difference. Professor Aldrich sat near the front, watching with a deepening expression. His usual stern demeanor softened as he saw the undeniable proof. For years, he had searched for groundbreaking discoveries in physics, new laws that could revolutionize energy. Yet here was something simple, elegant, and practical, transforming what already existed without breaking any rules. When the demonstration ended, the room erupted into applause. Scientists whispered excitedly among themselves, while reporters hurried to capture reactions. But Aldridge remained still for a moment, his mind racing. Slowly, he stood and walked to the podium. The crowd quieted instantly, sensing the weight of the moment. The professor looked out over the audience, then at Lily standing nearby. With a quiet, sincere voice, he spoke. "I was wrong." His eyes met Lily's, filled with respect and humility. The impossible was never physics. It was my own narrow view. The hall remained silent, absorbing the truth in his words. This was more than a concession. It was a breakthrough. The impossible wasn't about discovering new laws or forces. It was about opening minds and embracing new ways to think. Lily smiled gently, the relief and joy shining in her eyes. The battle was far from over, but this moment marked a new beginning, not just for her invention, but for how the world could approach the problems of energy and sustainability. The conference closed with renewed hope, a promise that progress doesn't always mean reinventing the wheel. Sometimes it means turning it in a smarter direction. The afternoon sun warmed the university garden, casting soft light over the blooming flowers and tall trees that swayed gently in the breeze. The air was filled with the quiet sounds of nature, birds chirping, leaves rustling, and the distant murmur of students walking nearby. It was a peaceful place, a perfect spot for reflection and new beginnings. Lily and Professor Aldridge walked side by side along the winding stone path. Their steps were slow and measured, each lost in thought, but connected by a shared experience that had changed them both. The professor glanced over at Lily, a small smile breaking through his usually serious expression. "You know," he began, "I have learned more from you in these past months than from many years of study and research. You challenged not just my ideas, but my whole way of thinking." Lily looked up at him, eyes bright with quiet pride but also humility. "I never meant to challenge you, Professor. I just wanted to find a way to help. Sometimes, the best ideas come from simply asking different questions." Aldridge nodded thoughtfully. "That's true. I was so focused on discovering new laws of physics, I forgot that sometimes progress comes from seeing what's already there in a new light. Your invention reminds me that science is not just about complexity, it's about creativity and courage." They paused near a bench where a small group of students and community members had gathered, listening eagerly as Lily explained her smart grid and its potential. The crowd was a mix of young and old, scientists and neighbors, all inspired by the simple yet powerful idea that one girl had brought to life. A young student approached Lily, holding a notebook filled with sketches and questions. "How did you know to build something like this?" she asked, eyes wide with admiration. Lily smiled warmly. "I was curious. I asked a lot of questions and wasn't afraid to try things that seemed different. It's okay to wonder, and to make mistakes while you learn." The professor watched the interaction, feeling a deep sense of hope. "You've started something important here, Lily. This is more than just an invention. It's a reminder that the future belongs to those willing to think differently and act bravely." Lily looked toward the horizon, where the sun dipped low but still shone brightly, its golden light spreading across the sky. The warmth touched her face, filling her with a sense of possibility. "The world is ready," she said softly, "not just for new science, but for open minds and brave ideas. For people willing to see things in a new way." Aldridge placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you're leading that change. You've shown us that courage and imagination can open doors we didn't even know existed." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the sun's light stretch across the garden. Around them, life continued, students laughing, flowers blooming, birds flying free. It was a new horizon, full of hope and promise. As the last rays of sunlight touched the earth, Lily and Aldridge knew that this was only the beginning. The impossible question had been answered, not by new physics, but by the strength of a curious mind and the courage to think differently. The sun shone bright, symbolizing hope, growth, and the endless possibilities when imagination meets courage. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe for more inspiring content, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment below. What idea would you challenge if you could? I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next video.